As I record this, we're just on the cusp of Christmas, and jolly old Saint Amazon has delivered something fun into my stocking. This book, right here, the 2012 book Mars Attacks 50th Anniversary Collection, published by Abrams Comic Arts and Topps, the original publishers of the original Mars Attacks card series from 1962. And, as one might guess from the stuff that I'm into, what my channel is about, I love Mars Attacks, but not actually the movie, which is what most people think of when they hear of Mars Attacks. Um, for me, the Mars Attacks movie represents like the start of Tim Burton's decline and sort of slide into mediocrity. He releases Pee Wee's Big Adventure, which is fine, and then he has this string of amazing films that are like his most archetypal films, the most Tim Burton-y films. Right, so you got Beetlejuice, Batman, Edward Scissorhands, Nightmare Before Christmas, which he created and produced but didn't direct, Batman Returns, and then he makes Ed Wood, which is his best movie. Like the other ones are his best, like most Tim Burton-y movies, but Ed Wood is like his best movie. And then he makes Mars Attacks, which I can see what he was trying to do. This homage, this satire, satirical homage to like 1950s B movies. And that's a really hard thing to do. It's hard to do a satirical homage to anything. Most often they just end up being like making fun of the tropes of the thing. To actually do like a loving tribute is really difficult. And I think something like Lost Skeleton of Cadavra actually does that really well for 50s sci-fi. Mars Attacks not as much. I really missed the mark. A lot of critics said that it was the sort of movie that Ed Wood have made if he had a budget, which means it was still bad, but now it doesn't even have the charm of the low budget, right? It's just expensive and bad, as opposed to kind of charming and bad. And then after that, I mean, that was a commercial failure, Mars Attacks, and then Tim Burton then slid into mediocrity. Um, just almost misses like every possible mark. So no, the movie is what it is. But the original cards I love, and those original Mars Attacks cards from 1952 are like one of the quintessential pieces of mid-century monster kitsch. Right? You have Universal monsters, other monster movies. You've got the horror hosts like Vampira, got up there. You got EC Comics, Tales from the Crypt, Weird Science, that sort of thing. Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, Addams Family and Munsters, Count Chocula, Frankenberry, The Monster Mash Haunted Mansion, and Mars Attacks cards. Now, unfortunately, I am not old enough to have grown up with the cards or the controversy around them. These came out in 1962. I was born in 1977. Um, so I missed that. But to be fair, a lot of people missed it. Because one of the things I learned from this book, actually, is that the cards never had wide distribution, even in the United States, let alone internationally. Because they were just too controversial right away that Topps kind of pulled them before they really got widespread. So the reputation actually had further reach than the actual cards themselves did. But I did grow up with Topps's own 1980s homage to Mars Attacks, which was their Dinosaurs Attack series. They did their own satirical homage to Mars Attacks. And here I still have my original Dinosaurs Attack cards here from the 1980s. Love them. I love dinosaurs. And another thing I learned from reading the book, my first time actually seeing all of the cards and reading the entire story to them, is that Dinosaurs Attack actually has a much better plot than Mars Attacks does. It's actually a coherent plot. There's a coherent story that goes from beginning to end, which is great. But that was my first introduction to anything Mars Attacks-ish. In the 1990s, there was this resurgence of interest in some of these mid-century things that were sort of too gruesome and ahead of their time in the 50s. So this is really typified by like the HBO Tales from the Crypt series. Right, take the old EC comics, which were ahead of their time. They were reviled and blacklisted and censored and burned and everything else. And now in 1990s, HBO is making this like extreme, edgy, gruesome TV show out of it. And in that same milieu, Topps, well, they started a comic book company that published Jurassic Park comics, and they also published comics of Mars Attacks, their own homegrown IP. And that's where I first came across Mars Attacks, was in those comics in the 1990s, published by Topps. And with the exception of the film, I've like enjoyed Mars Attacks ever since. Um, Including getting Spirit Halloween's like life-size Mars Attacks Martian animatronic for my now defunct store. Sadly, when I closed the store, I did have to sell off the Martian because I have nowhere in my home to actually put it. Alas, alas. But in all that time, I've never actually owned a complete set of the cards. Now, I'd seen cards, I'd seen the pictures, all that sort of thing. But I've never had a complete set of them, whether we're talking the original set for 1962, which goes for a small fortune today, or any of the later reprintings that they've done of the cards that often have additional material and that sort of thing. And that's where this book comes in. This is a great book. It's essentially a little coffee table book, small little coffee table book. It's not a lot of deep material. It does have some interesting stuff in it, though, and we'll talk about that. But first, I want to focus. The presentation of this thing is great. Nice little book. It's got this cover that's replicating the graphics off of the wrappers, but not just that. But it actually is like a waxy sort of thing itself. Like it's this almost like wax paper dust cover that is like a card wrapper in itself. Just great graphics in here. Looking good. And then when you pull off the wrapper, pull off the dust cover, it's got a stick of gum in there. And in fact, the one on the back is broken. Ah! So it's like trying to simulate that sense of you're opening up a wrapper of Mars Attacks cards, which I think is really great. It's got this really nice aesthetic sensibility to it. That tries to make up for the fact that when you're looking at them in a book, you miss the full tactile expression of having the cards. Having the cards, either in a stack or in a card binder. If you don't have that, then at least trying to simulate it as much as possible with the book is a really nice touch. All right, so let's have a look at the book here. I've got my Mezco Mars Attacks action figure here to help me out. Finding him at a local toy show actually helped me avoid having to buy the Super 7 Mars Attacks figure there, which is pretty good. In fact, this guy's even in the book here. So let's open this up here, and oh, beautiful full spread here of card number 1. The invasion begins. There he is. There's the Mezco figure right there. Hooray. Like I said, this is sort of a like a mini coffee table book, right? It's not an extensive history of Mars Attacks, but it is a good sort of visual, really good visual presentation in here. Nice bit of information, but it's mostly about looking at the cards. So we've got this intro by Len Brown here, who was one of the co-creators of Mars Attacks, working for Topps Comics here, or Topps Cards here. Just a few pages of history, and then this is great. This, as it mentions later on in the book, is a photo of the only known wrapped pack of Mars Attacks cards that this has never been opened, which is great. It's those little historical pieces like that, right, that make it worthwhile. So here we go, and this is what you have here. So you have these 2-page spreads. You have the back side of the card here, so you can read that. You can look at the art there. Why they chose text and then art and not art and then text, I don't know, whatever. And then you have these interesting little historical notes just talking about the development of the actual cards and sort of the thought processes behind them, interesting little bits of historical trivia, that sort of thing. So this isn't just reprinting the cards, it's actually it's weaving the story of how they came to existence into the content itself, which is pretty nice. Gorgeous art, and again, this beautiful over-the-top sort of stuff here. Starting to see why it's controversial as well. Destroying government, destroying people, all that sort of stuff. Destroying landmarks as well. And they talk in here about the debate that they had between showing intimate scenes like this and the big splashy, like, destroying monuments and landmarks and things like that. And how they wanted to strike the balance of doing both to show, like, here's Times Square being destroyed, but also the people in there. See how people themselves are dealing with it. Got Human Torch there. There goes the Empire State Building. Just needs Kong falling off of there. I love this one. There's all these charred corpses here. And this is sort of, I guess, like if somebody wanted to call me out on my BS, that I have gone on and on and on about, how awful modern horror is, and how much I prefer classic gothic horror and the atomic age monsters and that kind of thing, and for its respect for human dignity and stuff. And then I get delighted by all these charred corpses here in a Mars Attacks card. And my excuse I make for myself with this and like EC Comics is that you're still supposed to, first of all, understand this is a tragedy. But it's so over the top and so crazy and so lurid that that dulls the impact of the violence and makes it entertaining because it's so over the top, right? And maybe that's true of modern horror. Maybe that's how modern horror fans actually watch modern horror. And fair enough if that's the case. But for me, it's that veil of nostalgia, that this is something from the 60s. It's that mid-century monster kitsch, that nostalgia. And then just the over-the-top luridness of the violence itself is, to me, what makes it so hilarious. And this is one they actually had to redo. They had to retouch because she was much more scantily clad originally as well. So there was still a certain amount of decency that they had to adhere to. Another one of the most famous cards, the Burning Flesh. Super 7, their reaction series made a figure of this poor poor misbegotten soul here getting fried by the Martians. And then just got over the top cruelty. Again, they had to make her a little less scantily clad. There's all these absurdities, and they have to start getting like really creative here. The series is only 55 cards. We're about halfway through right now, and now we have to get creative, right? The Martians and their indestructible power is getting boring for the kids, so now we have to start inventing other things for them to do: tidal waves, shrink rays, and then the giant bugs come in. So the second act of Mars Attacks is that the Martians just sort of leave, and then the giant bugs take over and start attacking. Very much influenced by the giant bug movies of the 1950s, which were given an amazing homage, actually, at Halloween Horror Nights. I've did a video where I've softened on how they present the Universal monsters. In that, if you are going to translate the monsters into a modern horror milieu, then that's probably the best way you could do it. But the non-IP based Halloween Horror Nights stuff, including especially their giant bug haunt house, was fantastic. That was amazing. But anyways, yeah, giant bugs take over, and this is sort of the flaw that I kind of started to pick up here, is that, and in relative to Dinosaurs Attack, Dinosaurs Attack had a consistent plot line through the entire thing, and all the action actually draws from itself and draws from the plot and is logical. Whereas this, you get about half of the card series is just Martians attacking, they're indestructible. And then that gets boring. So then the giant insects attack, and they take up most of sort of the next quarter of the card series. Just these giant bug attacks. The Martians just kind of F off. And you see them periodically, like destroying the dog, one of the most famous cards. But most of it is now just fighting these giant bugs, which the humans have a much easier go at. In fact, the army wins this encounter right here. We've got a little bit of Godzilla, whatever there. Yeah, you have these giant bugs attacking, and then that gets boring. Where are we at here? Fighting giant insects. The humans actually are making some headway against them. And then here we go. Card 46. Now, all of a sudden, the humans pile into spaceships and go flying off to Mars. And it's like, how? When? Where? What? So they get like annihilated by the Martians. Then the Martians just leave and they fight giant bugs. They beat off the bugs, and now they have enough military capacity to go fly to Mars, where they start taking out the Martians. And no rhyme or reason, no explanation for why suddenly the humans are able to just annihilate the Martians on their home turf. It just happens. So it's like they just kind of saw it as like, okay, kids are getting bored of the Martians, so now we have giant bugs. Kids are getting bored of the giant bugs, so now we're just going to have the humans annihilating the Martians. So it's a bit wacky. There isn't really an overarching plot in Mars Attacks here, which is fine. As part of the comedy of it, is that it's just like this transparent, like, it's for kids, whatever, who cares, right? And then Mars does comes full circle. The Martians attacked Earth because Mars was going to explode. It's kind of like a reverse Superman, where like, um, if Krypton was going to explode, so the Kryptonians all went to Earth. Same sort of thing. And then Mars does explode in the end. And then there's a checklist card right there. Now, in the 90s, with the revival of Mars Attacks, Topps took the opportunity to reissue the original cards, and some of these finally make some of these cards that hadn't been produced originally for whatever reason. And a lot of these cards were done by Earl Norem, who you might recognize if you are of my same age cohort and read the old He-Man and the Masters of the Universe magazine. He did a lot of those covers and posters and things like that for that. Well, they pull them out of mothballs to do this these extra cards here for the 90s reissue of Mars Attacks. And so those are interesting in their own right as well. And then you get the covers. Basically, they made a card series with the covers of the Mars Attacks comics. And so that's what you get those republished in here as well. This is actually my favorite one of them, Earl Norem piece of basically the peaceful Martians' first attempt at contact, which didn't work, and that's what then led to the Martian invasion to follow. Yeah, great pieces, and it's really nice to have these. I mean, these are nostalgic for me, in the sense that these are like the pieces that I saw as with the Mars Attacks comics as a kid, and then some behind the scenes stuff. Oh no, where's some stuff? Some behind the scenes stuff here of the concept art is also in here. So the production, the designs that the Martians went through, some of the original pencils for the cards that they redrew and then painted over to make the actual finished cards themselves. So this is a great little resource here, and some of the packaging as well. Originally called Attack from Space, when they first just did a test run of them, and then changed to Mars Attacks because it had a little bit more punchier, like a headline. Said there some wrappers and so on. Just and then some of the repainted cards they had to redo to reduce the gore in there, the lurid gore and everything. Like, oh, what a shame losing the guy's rib cage there. But yeah, just a great book and a great resource for. There's the back of the one existent wrapped package of Mars Attacks cards. Also, include some cards as well in here. There's 4 cards that it comes with, which I am not taking off. I'm going to leave these on here until the day that I do get a set of the reprinted cards. Then I might take these out and put them in my book with Dinosaurs Attack and stuff. But for now, there you go. That's the book. A wonderful little book. There you have it. Now, at some point, I may still get a set of the reprinted cards. I'm never the originals. I have not. That's a down payment on a house right there. But I may get a set of the reprints to keep in the same binder with my Dinosaurs Attack cards. But in the meantime, this is a really good surrogate. You get to appreciate the content of the cards themselves, so the images on the cards, and some of the supplementary material in later card series. You don't get the physicality of the cards themselves, which is unfortunate. But I mean, this book still really comes close in reprinting the art at card size, of having this like wax paper wrapper on the book, having the gum in the book there, the book cover there. So it does a really good job of trying to imitate the physicality of the cards, without actually being the cards themselves. So that's certainly worth picking up. And if you are an aficionado of trading cards and stuff, Topps has also released similar books about the Garbage Pail Kids, wacky packages, and their Star Trek and Star Wars cards from back in the day. In fact, when I was seeing this on Amazon, seeing what other books they made, seeing some of those Star Wars packages, the covers, just like so took me back there to the 1980s. But yeah, it's sort of if all this is, reminding fellow Gen Xers out there of our childhood at the corner store across from the school there, right? And even though these books were published like over a decade ago, like this is 2012, this book came out. Doing a review on a book that's over a decade old, but still readily available on Amazon. I had no problem ordering this. This is still out there, still in print. Um, do so. I think this is one of the, again, sort of quintessential pieces of mid-century monster kitsch. If you're into the lifestyle of classic monsters and mid-century monster kitsch and that sort of stuff, you have to have at least a set of the cards or this book itself. This is like the best runner-up to having the actual cards themselves.